So today I'm going to share a few thoughts on why comics are good for you to read. But before I go into that, I want to share a few thoughts on why comics are great in and of themselves, without even bringing vitamins into the picture. I do a lot of teaching around the state and beyond, and in my classrooms I usually throw up a few pages on the screen. I start with this and I ask the participants, which one do you like better? Oh, I like the one on the right better because it looks more professional. No, I like the one on the left better because it's more clear, it's easier to read. And who drew these? I drew these. I drew the one on the left when I was 11. I drew the one on the right a few years ago. And it's interesting to me that some people like the stuff I did when I was 11 better. Now, I've been drawing for 17 years, practicing perspective, anatomy, fabric folds, gesture. There's a lot to learn making comics, and I've worked really hard to get as good as I am. And a few years ago, I did a graphic novel called The Front. And then I introduced a character named Jared, the Abominable Snowman. He quickly became the most popular character in the story. Why is that? Well, because he's a big monster and he's got the mind of a child. It's kind of funny. And so as a present to my readers one year, I decided to make a Christmas card for them as if Jared drew it. So a Christmas card from the mind of a child, and it looked something like this. And the readers went crazy for it. Jersey, this is the best thing you've ever drawn. When are you going to do more comics like this? And I was like, hold on a second. I spent 17 years getting to be as good as I am, and all I had to do was this 5-minute little crummy crayon comic, and that makes you happy? How can that be? How can you like that stuff better? Well, as it turns out, you don't have to be a great illustrator to be a great storyteller. Comics is telling a story with images, and that is independent of the quality of the images. It sounds weird because comics are made of drawings, but you don't actually have to draw well to make good comics. You have to be a good storyteller. So let's cite some reasons why comics are so great. You're creating a world of the 5 senses and more in World of Emotions with just colors and lines. It's just images, it's just visual medium. So you can show somebody being embarrassed by just changing the background color. You can create a world of sound quality with just colors and line choices. There's more. You can create comic sequences that can be read in multiple ways. That is idiosyncratic to the reader. The reader gets to decide which way is the proper way to read it, and both ways are right. So the reader is invested, the reader is involved, the reader is participating in the comic's narrative as it unfolds. Here's a great example by Ernie Colon, where he took one drawing and made it serve 2 moments in the story. One drawing becomes panel 3 and panel 5 at the same time. You just can't do this in other mediums. Only comics can do this just by the nature of the juxtaposed images. There's another great example where I took simultaneous moments of people in different scenes and had them interact all through word balloons, and then by virtue of trying to figure out that problem, I found a way to create a different kind of reading flow on the page, so it reads in a Z pattern instead of left to right, top to bottom. That's pretty interesting, and that's observing the rules of art in comics. Comics can be about anything. Whatever kind of genre you like, there's a corresponding comic to that. And there's more to comics than just fantasy and superhero fiction. If you just go to your local library or bookstore, you'll see that if you just browse around a little bit. Okay, so you're still not sold on this thing. Well, guess what? Comics are actually good for you to read. And I'm going to start my case, I've got proof, by just showing you the fact that just putting images in a row in a sequence, you construct the scene automatically. If you look at the image on its own, it's just an image, but in a sequence it becomes a story. Now, in 2007, I worked with the Art Serve Michigan Literacy Arts Comic Book Project, where I visited a bunch of different Detroit public schools, visiting these classrooms, teaching kids how to make comics, and through that process, we discovered that making comics and reading comics actually boosts reading comprehension skills. And we're going to start with prediction. Comics uses prediction all the time, just between the panels, but also on the old page turn where you put a moment of tension on the page so that you say, what's going to happen next? I got to find out. The comic book cover is a time-honored tradition of using predictive imagery to make us wonder if the hero is going to live or die. Also, what you don't show. Concealing things, like putting the villain in shadow. What's he look like? Who is he? I'm going to start wondering about that. Also showing conflicting information, having the bad guy show up and using sweet language. Is he good or is he bad? I'm going to have to read more to find out. Also inferencing. Comics couldn't exist without our ability to infer. And if the changes are less distinct between the panels, it's easy for us to put together the sequence, but our brains start working overtime when the changes are more distinct between the panels. If it's showing a whole bunch of different aspects of a scene, our brains are cranking to make order and sense out of all that. Here's a great example from a student of mine where he did this drawing. I asked him, what's with the flower coming out of the kid's head? And he said, oh, his brain is exploding. He's really mad. Well, that's a sophisticated metaphor, but the kid didn't have the words to express it, but he could express it in an image instantly. And there's more. The kids in my classrooms, they invented iconography, like showing the volume of somebody shouting by having sound waves emanating from it. Also defying traditional reading direction by having a character move from right to left, or left to right, right to left. When you look at the Mona Lisa, you don't start at the top left and scan like a book. You go where your eye wants to go. Comics observes the rules of art as well as literature. And this all culminated in the Kids Read Comics event that I do every year. It's coming up this June, where all day long for a 2-day event, we have hands-on workshops for kids, and kids get to participate in learning experiences with local cartoonists. So what did we learn today? Comics is a truly unique medium. It's a very exciting medium that does things that no other medium can do. And it turns out that it's actually good for you to read comics. So I encourage you to go out today to your local library or bookstore or comic book store and check out some comics today. And thank you very much for your time.